Hanja means Chinese characters, and Hanja-eo, vocabulary that is derived or based off Chinese characters. And so anytime anyone has studied Korean for some time will probably hit upon this. The best way to think about it is Hanja and Hanja-eo is to Korean, right? I forget how to do this thing. Is to Korean. Is this as Greek and Latin is to English. And so the first distinction I want to make is between Hanja and Hanja-eo. And so these, I would say, are the individual characters. And these are composites, words built from the different Chinese characters. So one way to think about it is, for example, in an English word, you have the word television, and this is a Greek word, morpheme, and then a Latin. So Hanja are more like morphemes, which is a unit of meaning. Then you can take something like tele, which means far, or at a distance, to make new words, obviously, things like telephone, and this is both a Greek and a Greek root, so this is sound from far away. And so Chinese characters function in this way, Hanja. And so you have Chinese characters originated from China. It got adopted by Korea, Japan, and also Vietnam. I will focus on Korea, of course, here. And so what's interesting is that in each of these, Korea is quite different because they developed their own writing system based off Chinese. But they have their unique Hanja. So an example in Japanese is, I don't know how to pronounce this in Japanese, but it's this word. I think it means mountain pass. Pass. And this is created by the Japanese. And so this means mountain, and this means up, and this means down. So this word combined together means to go up and down on a mountain. And so what's interesting is that there are about 100 or so Korean native Hanja. Most of them are names and some specific things to Korea. And then, but they do have one word that I found used fairly often, and it's this word, shi, which is written like this. And this is not in Chinese or Japanese. And this meaning is means the in-laws of the wife. Put another way, it's the husband's family. And so how you would use this is you would say something like shi 어머니, which equals the wife's mother-in-law. And so this is an example of a Korean native Hanja. So this is not all that common. And so what is more common is the combination of existing Chinese words. So what I found is that there are about 7 types, which I will write here. So this first type, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And what's interesting is the relationships between Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. So the first type is from China going to Korea and going to Japan. And they are all used in the same meaning. So an example of this is the word pumo, which means, parents, father and mother. So this is something starting from China, going to Korea and Japan, and their vocabulary and the meaning is used in the same way. And then you have vocabulary that is used that's derived from Japan, that's gone to Korea, and then also China. And this is because in Japan, during the 19th century, opened up to the West, so it was through Japan mostly that a lot of new ideas and vocabulary came into Korea and China. So this is used in the same way, but it's derived from Japan. And so example of this is 전화, which means telephone. And then another interesting thing is vocabulary is derived from Japan to Korea, but then it's not used in China. And it's because China probably has a different version. An example of this is 비행기, airplane. So it's shared by Korea and Japan, but not shared by China. So then, so that's number 3. And then number 4 is you have vocabulary that is kind of shared across the 3 languages, and then there's similarities between the Korean and the Japanese, and then sort of analogous but slightly different meaning. An example is 고등학교. So in China, this means institutes of higher education, while in Korea and Japan, it means high school. So the similar vocabulary, 고등 means higher level, and 학교 means school, but they have a slightly different meaning, although they're in a similar kind of semantic field, you may argue. And then what's really interesting is this group number 5, is vocabulary that is developed in Korea that is not used in China or Japan. And so there are quite a number of these that I recently kind of found, and how I do it is I would look up the Korean word and then cross-check it in the sort of the Chinese dictionary and then a Japanese dictionary. And if I can't find it in the Chinese or the Japanese dictionary, then I think it is a Korean coined word. And so this is different than, for example, the shi that I mentioned earlier, which is a character in itself. These are category number 5 is more like a combination, unique to Korea. So examples of this, and there's quite a number that I found, but some common ones are 공책, which means notebook, things like 죄송합니다, and also 미안합니다. Even these, I would say, are very Korean, but they are derived from Chinese root words. It's kind of like when you think telephone. This is, very English, but then it's derived from Greek. So it's not like Koreans would think about this as Chinese vocabulary, but they are composed of Chinese root words. And then category number 6 is vocabulary that is a mix of Hanja and plus other roots. not roots, other languages, which is namely Korean and probably English. So you have a couple of these, such as you have something, you learn, you have 반, 말, and then 반 here means half, and then 말 is the Korean for speech and words. So you have a Chinese word plus a Korean word. And then you also have a mix of Korean and English and Hanja. For example, the word 소개팅 is a blind date. And what's interesting is that the Hanja 소개 means introduction, and then the ting comes from the English meeting, which has taken on a different meaning in Korean, which is kind of like a blind date. So 소개 ting is like a one-on-one blind date. And then, so then you have a combination of Chinese plus English. And what's interesting is that I've also found, not many, but there's a combination of all three. And what I found is a word called 팀, 장, 님. And so 팀 is the English for team. And you have 장, which is the leader. And then you have the Korean honorific 님. It's like Mr. or Sir. So you have a combination of English, Chinese, and Korean, which I think is fascinating. There may be more, so if you find some, please let me know. And then the last category is native words or native-like words, native words that masquerade and are actually based, are Hanja based. So these are particularly kind of tricky because you have to kind of dig into the etymology. But I found actually some of these. And so what's interesting in these is that they appear native, like a Korean word, but they're actually Chinese word based. So words like kimchi is actually Hanja based. For example, the word bechu, which means cabbage, is actually Chinese based. And then I recently found the word 당근, 당근, for carrot, is actually Chinese based. And so these have long entered through Chinese, long entered into the Korean language, so that the Chinese part of it is masked and it is accepted fully as a Korean word. And so this happens with every language where certain words are introduced but has changed or been used so long that its original etymology has been forgotten. So to recap, the Hanja-eo is a combination of Hanja, which is the Chinese characters, which function like morphemes, units of meaning, which are then used to build new words. And we find that there are 7 categories here. And so the first category is like here, the vocabulary is helpful, like pumo. Number 2 is from Japan, 전화. Number 3 is shared by Korea and Japan, 비행기. Number 4, 고등학교, is used in all 3 languages but have different nuances. And number 5, which I find is most interesting, is vocabulary that Koreans developed that are unique to the Korean language and is comprised of the Hanja-eo. And then number 6, you have a mix, and number 7 is you have some native words that are actually Hanja based, that seem like native words. And so that is a summary of the different types of Hanja-eo used in Korean. If you find any more, you can let me know. in the comments below. Thank you, and I hope this was helpful.